Humanity had always believed in its potential, but when faced with the vast and ancient powers of the galaxy, that belief seemed small, almost laughable. The Exertheri, the most advanced and powerful race in the known universe, had made it clear during their first official contact with Earth's representatives that humans were nothing more than an insignificant species, just another primitive race in a galaxy filled with superior beings. The Grand Council of Galactic Species, held in the towering spires of the Exertheri homeworld, was a spectacle of political dominance. A sea of strange, towering alien figures, each representing a different part of the galaxy, sat in opulent silence as the humans entered the vast chamber. Earth's diplomats, led by Ambassador Rachel Park, had hoped to secure some kind of alliance, or at the very least, establish peaceful relations. What they didn't expect was the cold, unrelenting arrogance that met them. The Exertheri Lord, Lord Vikatar, stood before them, his towering form casting a shadow over the human representatives. His voice echoed in the chamber, dripping with condescension. Your species has barely begun to scratch the surface of space exploration. You have no place in the Council of the Stars. Return to your solar system, Earthlings, and focus on your primitive concerns. Leave the greater galaxy to those who understand it. The other members of the council murmured in agreement, their voices like a chorus of indifference. There was a moment of stunned silence from the humans, but Rachel Park quickly regained her composure. We are not asking for power, Lord Vikatar. We wish only to share knowledge, to be part of the intergalactic community. Vikatar's laugh rang through the room like the sound of an ancient bell tolling. Knowledge, he sneered. Your knowledge is irrelevant. You are no more than a curious footnote in the history of the cosmos. Perhaps when you have evolved beyond your infantile stage, you may be of some interest. The humans stood silent, their faces a mix of disbelief and simmering anger. They had expected some resistance, but this level of disdain. It stung. This wasn't merely dismissal. It was a statement that humanity was unworthy of even basic respect. After the meeting, Earth's representatives were escorted out, with the final words of Lord Vikatar ringing in their ears. Return to your insignificant world, and remember this day as the moment you learned your place in the universe. As the humans departed the Grand Hall, the weight of their failure pressed down on them. Yet within the depths of their hearts, something stirred. This dismissal, this humiliation, ignited something primal, a determination to prove their worth. Humans had always been underestimated throughout history, whether it was the first flight, the exploration of the oceans, or the rise of civilizations. They had faced adversity and emerged stronger. Back on Earth, a different kind of meeting was happening, one in the shadows. Secret military councils, scientific minds, and the brightest engineers of humanity's elite began discussing the only option that seemed feasible, the Human Resurgence Project. They would reverse engineer the alien technology that they had been gifted by accident, a relic found on Mars, buried deep in the red planet's crust for millennia. It had been dismissed by some as a curiosity, but to the brightest minds, it was the spark that could ignite a revolution. The Exertheri thought they had crushed humanity's ambitions in one fell swoop. What they didn't know was that they had unwittingly sown the seeds of a war that would change the balance of the galaxy forever. Humanity was ready to show the universe that they were not just another species. They were the species that would conquer the stars. The human response to the Exertheri's dismissal wasn't immediate, but it was relentless. Earth's governments and military forces, once scattered in their efforts, now united under a single banner, the Human Resurgence Project. The goal was clear. If the galaxy saw humanity as insignificant, they would soon learn to fear it. But more importantly, humanity would no longer beg for a place at the table of galactic powers. They would carve their own seat. In underground bunkers and secret research facilities, Earth's top scientists and engineers worked day and night, reverse engineering the alien technology they had discovered on Mars. The artifact, a strange relic composed of materials that defied human understanding, was unlike anything found in the galaxy's known archives. It was believed to be part of a long-dead alien civilization that had disappeared before the rise of the galactic superpowers. Dr. Elena Kova, a brilliant but somewhat reclusive scientist, spearheaded the project. Her hands flew across consoles, piecing together fragments of alien technology, unlocking secrets buried for millennia. The most immediate breakthrough was in propulsion systems. Within months, human ships were fitted with engines capable of faster-than-light travel, something that would take the galactic powers centuries to replicate. But that was just the beginning. By late 2245, the first human prototype warship, Aegis, was ready for its maiden voyage. It was far from perfect, with many systems still untested, but its advanced shields, laser cannons, and most importantly, its FTL drive, gave humanity the ability to fight back against the galactic powers that had once dismissed them. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy carried on its business, unaware of the silent storm that was brewing in the void. But that was about to change. A few weeks after the Aegis made its first successful jump to a nearby star system, humanity received an unexpected message. An encrypted transmission intercepted by the newly established Human Communications Network. The sender was unknown, but the message was clear. The Exartheri are not the only power in this galaxy. There are those who will see your rise, and they will not stand by idly. They will come for you, and they will destroy you. But they will underestimate you, just as they underestimated me. You must be ready. You are not alone. The message was short, cryptic, and signed only with the symbol of a race unknown to humanity. Yet it spoke volumes. A faction, hidden in the galaxy's shadows, was offering humanity an alliance, a chance to level the playing field against the galaxy's tyrants. Humans had no choice but to consider the offer. Trusting an unknown ally was dangerous, but it was their only hope. As the weeks passed, more signals came in. Alien species who had long suffered under the boot of the galactic elite. One by one, they offered their assistance. The Tovori, a bird-like species from a distant corner of the galaxy, offered advanced bioengineering technology. The Uikra, a race of aquatic beings, provided designs for deep space mining operations that would allow humanity to harvest resources at an unprecedented scale. Slowly but surely, a coalition was forming. Though it was fragile, composed of many races with their own motivations and grievances. But even as alliances formed in the shadows, humanity had to contend with immediate dangers. The Zentorians, a once neutral race, had begun to show signs of hostility toward Earth. They controlled vital trade routes, and their fleets were notoriously aggressive. Intelligence suggested that the Zentorians had learned of humanity's growing technological prowess and feared the threat it posed to their own dominance. By 2246, the first test of humanity's new military power came sooner than expected. A Zentorian warship, the Dreadstorm, appeared in Earth's outer system, ostensibly to conduct a routine inspection. But the humans knew better. The Dreadstorm wasn't there to inspect. It was there to intimidate, to remind Earth of its place in the galactic hierarchy. This was not the first time an alien race had come to Earth with hostile intentions, but this time, humanity would not back down. A covert strike team, led by Commander Kai Rhodes, was assembled to launch a surprise assault on the Zentorian warship. The mission was simple: disable their ship's weapons and communications, forcing them into retreat. The stakes were high. Failure meant war, open, devastating war with an opponent far stronger than humanity. The Aegis and its new fleet, though still under construction, were humanity's last hope. But Commander Rhodes and his team were determined. Under the cover of darkness, the humans launched their attack. Stealth fighters snuck into the Zentorian ship's blind spots, planting explosives on critical power conduits. The crew aboard the Dreadstorm had no idea what hit them. The human strike was fast, brutal, and effective. In a matter of hours, the Zentorian warship was crippled, forced to retreat back to its home base for repairs. The humans had won their first victory, a small one, but a victory nonetheless. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity was no longer the insignificant species they had once believed. But there was no time to rest. The Centaurians would return, and they would bring reinforcements. And with the message from the mysterious alien faction still lingering in their minds, humanity's leaders knew that the war for the stars was only just beginning. The victory against the Centaurians, though a tactical success, was not enough to deter the galaxy's major powers from their belief that humanity was still a minor player in their grand game. In the wake of the Dreadstorm incident, Earth's governments and military strategists scrambled to prepare for retaliation. News of the human assault spread quickly through the galactic channels, igniting fear and outrage among the galactic elites. But rather than retreating, they chose to launch a full-scale counterattack. The Calcarians, an ancient and fierce warrior race, allied with the Exertheri and Centaurians to strike at the heart of humanity's emerging military. The Calcarians were ruthless, known for their superior combat tactics and unmatched martial prowess. It was clear that the galaxy's top powers would not let humanity's first success go unpunished. They had underestimated the humans once, but they would not make the same mistake again. Humanity's situation was dire. The Aegis was still in its infancy, and their fleet was smaller than most of the larger galactic forces. Despite their technological breakthroughs, they lacked the numbers and experience to face such an overwhelming coalition. But humanity had one advantage that no other species possessed: sheer determination. The desire to survive, to prove themselves worthy of a place in the stars, burned brightly in their hearts. Commander Kai Rhodes, the man who had led the successful strike on the Centaurian warship, now found himself at the center of humanity's efforts to outwit the galaxy's deadliest forces. In a bold move, Rhodes and his team launched a covert mission to infiltrate Calcarian-controlled space and strike at their supply lines. Their goal was to disrupt the Calcarian war effort by targeting key infrastructure, leaving them vulnerable and unable to maintain a sustained assault on Earth. With the help of their alien allies, including the Tovori and the Uikra, the humans were able to gather critical intelligence on the Calcarians' fleet movements. They knew that if they could hit the Calcarian supply routes and to stabilize their military supply chain, it could buy humanity precious time to regroup. But the plan was fraught with danger. Calcarian ships were equipped with advanced sensor systems, and the risk of being detected was high. The strike team, composed of a mix of human soldiers and alien operatives, launched their mission under the cover of deep space. Their target was a Calcarian mining colony located on a barren moon, far from the prying eyes of the galaxy's primary shipping routes. The Calcarians had been using the colony to extract valuable resources used in the construction of their warships. As the team approached, their stealth ships evaded detection, just barely. They had only one shot at this. Commander Rhodes led the assault, his heart pounding in his chest as they neared the colony's main complex. Their mission was simple: sabotage the mining operations, destroy key infrastructure, and cripple the Calcarian fleet's supply of precious materials. The attack was swift and brutal. The strike team breached the outer perimeter of the colony, planting explosives on the primary resource processing plant. They fought their way through the compound, the tension in the air palpable. Every second counted. If they were discovered, they would be annihilated before they could escape. As they planted the final explosives on the main reactor, the alarm went off. A piercing, shrill sound filled the air as Calcarian soldiers flooded the complex, weapons drawn. The humans and their allies fought back, using guerrilla tactics to hold the line long enough for the countdown to finish. The explosions rocked the mining facility, sending shockwaves through the colony and causing massive damage to the Calcarian war machine. With the facility in ruins and the supply lines severed, the strike team made a desperate retreat. Calcarian reinforcements arrived too late to stop the damage. The team barely escaped. Their ship swarmed by Calcarian fighters, but they made it back to the safety of human space, their mission a resounding success. They had delivered a blow to one of the galaxy's most feared empires, showing that humanity could strike back against even the most powerful forces. However, the consequences of their actions were immediate. The Calcarians, enraged by the sabotage, declared open war on humanity. The alliance between the Exartheri, Centaurians, and Calcarians was now a full-scale military coalition. Their combined fleets, numbering in the hundreds, were now focused solely on humanity. The galaxy's major powers had grossly underestimated humanity's resolve. What had begun as a small, covert operation had now escalated into an all-out war. Earth's forces, though still vastly outnumbered, had made their mark. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed into submission. But the victory came at a cost. Humanity's first strike had only drawn the ire of their enemies, and now, the galaxy's most powerful forces were coming for them with a vengeance. The real fight for survival was about to begin. The war had come to humanity's doorstep, and the galaxy was watching with bated breath. What had once been a small, isolated conflict was now an open war between humanity and the most powerful empires in the galaxy. The coalition of Exartheri, Centaurians, and Calcarians had declared total war on Earth, convinced that they would crush the human rebellion before it could take root. They underestimated one thing: the unyielding resolve of humankind. In the wake of the devastating blows struck against the Calcarian supply lines, Earth's leaders quickly realized that they were at the precipice of an all-out war, one that could either obliterate them or catapult humanity into a new era of power. But they also knew they could not face the galaxy's combined forces head-on with their current fleet. The odds were simply too great. The Human Resurgence Project had to evolve. The Aegis, their first warship, was now the symbol of humanity's resistance, but it was only one ship. The humans needed more. More ships, more technology, and more allies. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Humanity's next move was bold and ambitious. They would take the war directly to the galactic heart. A daring plan was set into motion to strike at the core of the Exartheri Empire. The goal was simple but perilous: infiltrate the heart of the enemy's territory and sabotage their most prized and heavily guarded asset. The Starforge, the massive facility where the Exartheri constructed their most advanced weapons and warships. The operation was codenamed Inferno Strike. Commander Kai Rhodes, now a seasoned war hero, was chosen to lead the mission. He would take a team of elite soldiers, supported by their growing fleet of warships, and infiltrate the Starforge. The plan was to disable the production of weapons and ships, effectively crippling the Exartheri war machine. But failure meant certain death. As the mission drew closer, Earth's leadership had to decide whether to involve their alien allies in this high-stakes operation. The Tavori were eager to help, seeing an opportunity to strike at the heart of the Exartheri, their ancient oppressors. The Lycra also pledged support, providing advanced mining technology that would help breach the heavily fortified Starforge. Even the Drathi, a mysterious insectoid species that had been watching the rise of humanity, offered assistance, though their motivations remained unclear. With their allies on board, Earth launched its most daring strike yet. The operation began in the dead of night. A fleet of human and alien ships, cloaked in stealth technology, emerged from deep space, approaching the Exartheri system under the cover of darkness. The Aegis, now upgraded with alien technology, led the charge, flanked by the fastest and most agile ships humanity had ever built. Commander Rhodes stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of the Starforge, looming in the distance like a dark monolith. As the fleet approached the Starforge, a jarring realization hit. They were being watched. The Exartheri had anticipated a strike at some point, but they had not expected humanity to be so bold. A massive defense fleet, twice the size of humanity's own, appeared from behind the planet's moon, cutting off their escape route. The trap had been sprung. All ships engage at maximum speed. Rhodes commanded, his voice steady despite the rising tension. The Aegis shot forward, its advanced FTL drive activating for a brief jump, while smaller human and alien vessels broke into smaller groups, attempting to outmaneuver the massive Exer fleet. The battle that followed was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The space around the Starforge erupted in flashes of light as laser blasts, missiles, and ion cannons collided in a symphony of destruction. The Aegis led the charge, firing its powerful energy cannons at the enemy ships. Each shot sent shockwaves through the space around them, but the Exer fleet was relentless, firing back with devastating accuracy. As Rhodes and his team infiltrated the Starforge's defenses, they fought their way through waves of enemy troops. They had to disable the central core of the facility before the enemy could fully respond. Time was running out. Inside the Starforge, the humans and their allies fought through tight corridors, their boots clanging on the cold metal floors as they made their way to the heart of the facility. The deeper they went, the heavier the resistance became. The Exer were not willing to let their prized asset fall without a fight. Commander Rhodes' heart raced as he reached the central core, only to find a shocking twist. The Starforge was not just a weapons facility. It was a weapon in itself. A massive planet-destroying energy cannon, capable of annihilating entire worlds, was embedded in the very structure of the Starforge. The situation had just gone from bad to worse. Now, the mission wasn't just about sabotaging the facility. It was about preventing the galaxy from witnessing the total annihilation of Earth. The countdown to the Starforge's activation had already begun. Prepared to initiate the self-destruct sequence, Rhodes barked to his team, knowing that the only way to stop this new threat was to destroy the Starforge entirely. The mission had changed. There was no going back. The self-destruct sequence in the Starforge facility initiated with a deafening hum, a sound that vibrated through the metal walls and shook the very foundation of the ancient structure. Commander Kai Rhodes and his team had no time to celebrate their success. They had barely set the countdown in motion before the entire complex was rocked by a violent explosion. The facility's core was collapsing, and every second brought them closer to the heart of destruction. "Move! We don't have much time," Rhodes shouted as he sprinted down the narrow corridor, the blaring alarm echoing through the halls. His team followed close behind, weapons raised, aware that they had already triggered a chain of events that could not be undone. The Starforge was no longer just a weapons facility. It was a death trap. Explosions rang out from every direction as the building shook violently, threatening to tear itself apart. The human and alien strike team fought their way back to the surface, battling hordes of Exer forces, attempting to prevent their escape. Every hallway felt like a battlefield as laser blasts zipped past them, and the hum of energy shields crackled in the air. As they reached the outer levels of the facility, Rhodes could feel the ground beneath his feet begin to tremble more violently. The Starforge was collapsing faster than anyone had anticipated. The explosion that followed was colossal. A shockwave of light and sound pulsed out into space, lighting up the galaxy for miles around as the Starforge was ripped apart. The human fleet, led by the Aegis, had positioned itself in orbit around the Starforge to provide cover for the mission. As the shockwave of destruction slammed into the surrounding ships, many were caught off guard, their shields flickering under the intense energy. Yet, against all odds, the human ships held strong. "Damage report." Rhodes barked into his communicator as he sprinted toward the nearest escape shuttle. The voice of his chief engineer crackled through the line. "We're holding steady, Commander, but we've taken significant damage. The Aegis is still intact, but we'll need repairs as soon as we're clear." Rhodes nodded grimly. The victory was hard-earned, but it had cost them dearly. The Starforge had been humanity's greatest threat, and now it was gone. But what the humans did not know was that the destruction of the facility had sent ripples through the entire galaxy. The Exer, enraged by the loss of their most powerful weapon, were not going to sit idly by. The Calcarians and Centaurians, already reeling from their failed attempts to subdue humanity, now found themselves vulnerable as the balance of power shifted. Back on Earth, the Human Resurgence Project leadership watched the destruction unfold from their command center. They knew the war had just escalated to a level they had not anticipated. The Exartheri and their allies would not let such a blow go unanswered. The war for the future of the galaxy was on the cusp of becoming a full-blown intergalactic conflict. Report from the front. The high-ranking official on Earth's War Council said, his voice strained. "What are we looking at?" A technician quickly relayed the information. "The Starforge is gone. We've hit them hard, but they're regrouping. The Exartheri fleet is massing near the edge of their system, and they've begun deploying reinforcements. They'll be coming for us soon." The tension in the room was palpable. Earth had made a bold move, and it had worked. For now, the humans had struck a severe blow to the galactic powers, but the galaxy's largest empires were now united in their determination to wipe out this new threat before it could rise any further. They had thought humanity to be weak, but now they saw the human spirit for what it truly was, a force of nature. At the same time, across the galaxy, the mysterious allies who had been supporting humanity's rise were preparing for the inevitable counteroffensive. The Tovori, Yikra, and even the enigmatic Drathi were ready to face the might of the galactic elite, knowing that this war was not just about survival, but about shifting the balance of power in the universe. The destruction of the Starforge had left a gaping hole in the galaxy's most advanced weapons production, but it had also drawn a line in the sand. Humanity had demonstrated to the galaxy that they were not just a species to be overlooked. They were a species to be reckoned with. As the escape shuttles carrying Commander Rhodes and his team shot off toward the waiting human fleet, he looked out into the dark abyss of space, feeling the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them. They had just begun. The fight was far from over, and the price of this war would be steep. But if humanity had learned anything, it was that they would not go down without a fight. Not now. Not ever. The aftermath of the Starforge's destruction sent shockwaves through the galaxy. It wasn't just a blow to the Exartheri and their allies. It was a direct challenge to the galactic status quo. For centuries, the galaxy's empires had remained in a delicate balance, with each power holding sway over vast swaths of territory. The humans had dared to strike at the heart of one of the most powerful empires, and they had done so with devastating success. The response came swiftly. The Exartheri, enraged by the loss of their Starforge, immediately launched a full-scale retaliation against human colonies. Entire fleets of Exartheri warships converged on the Sol system, where Earth and its allies were still reeling from their most recent battle. The Zentorians and Calcarians, equally furious, pledged to join the assault, sending their fleets to reinforce the Exartheri forces. Together, they were poised to wipe humanity out of existence. Meanwhile, the Human Resurgence Project was in chaos. Earth's military had already suffered heavy losses in the Starforge operation, and now they had to face an even greater threat. The Aegis and its accompanying ships were still in the process of repairing the damage they had sustained, and Earth's resources were stretched thin. Commander Kai Rhodes, who had been hailed as a hero for his success on the Starforge mission, now found himself on the front lines of an entirely different kind of battle, a fight for survival on a galactic scale. "We can't hold out forever," Rhodes said grimly, staring at the display in the war room. A map of the solar system was covered in red markers, enemy fleets closing in from every direction. His voice was steady, but the reality of the situation hit him hard. Their initial success had been a powerful message, but now they were facing a coalition of forces far stronger than their own. The human fleet was outnumbered, but their resolve was unwavering. The Aegis, though damaged, had been retrofitted with the best of humanity's newly discovered alien technology, and its shields and weapons were superior to anything the galactic powers had encountered. But even with these advancements, it was clear to Rhodes that the upcoming battle would be their greatest challenge yet. "We need a strategy that keeps them off balance," Rhodes said, turning to his senior officers. We can't let them consolidate their forces. If they launch a full attack on Earth, we're finished. We need to hit them first. Hard. The idea was daring, but it was the only option. They would have to strike before the enemy fleets could fully unite. Rhodes and his team began working on a plan. An attack on the HFY flagship, the Supreme Conqueror, which had been seen leading the charge toward Earth. The flagship was the nerve center of the enemy fleet, and if they could destroy it or at least cripple it, it might buy humanity enough time to regroup. The mission would require precision. They would need to bypass the HFY defenses and infiltrate their flagship, a nearly impossible task given its size and advanced shielding. But Rhodes wasn't one to shy away from impossible odds. If humanity was to survive, they had to fight with everything they had. "I'll lead the team myself," Rhodes declared. "We've done the impossible before. We can do it again." With the plan in motion, the human fleet set course for the HFY flagship. But as they made their way through the cold expanse of space, something unexpected happened. A series of encrypted messages began to flood Earth's communications network, messages from their alien allies. The Tovori, Ukra, and even the mysterious Drathi had all rallied to humanity's cause. They were offering their support in the form of additional ships, technology, and resources. The alliance had grown. The HFY, Zentorians, and Calcarians were not just fighting humanity now. They were fighting a coalition of species that had suffered under the same oppressive rule. The humans were not alone. But even with the new support, the task ahead was daunting. Rhodes knew the risks of the mission, and as the fleet approached the enemy flagship, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this would be their hardest fight yet. If they failed, the galaxy would see humanity as nothing more than a footnote in history, a species that had risen too quickly, only to be crushed by the weight of the empires that had ruled for centuries. Yet, despite the fear and uncertainty, humanity's spirit burned brightly. They had been underestimated from the very beginning, and they had always come out on top. They had already defied the odds once. There was no reason to believe they couldn't do it again. As the Aegis and its fleet prepared for the assault, Commander Rhodes stood on the bridge, looking out into the vast expanse of space. The enemy was closing in, but humanity had come too far to back down now. "This is our moment," Rhodes said, his voice resolute. "We fight for our future. We fight for the stars." The battle for that HFY flagship, the Supreme Conqueror, was about to begin. Humanity's fleet, bolstered by their alien allies, had converged on the heart of the enemy's forces. The Aegis, though still scared from previous encounters, was at the forefront of the attack, its sleek hull gleaming in the cold expanse of space. Commander Kai Rhodes stood at the helm, his heart beating in time with the ship's systems, aware that this mission would decide the future of humanity. "Status report," Rhodes commanded as he surveyed the holographic battlefield. The Supreme Conqueror loomed large in the distance, its shields pulsating with menacing energy. A vast array of enemy ships surrounded it like a protective shield, ready to defend their flagship at all costs. "Enemy fleet is massed around the flagship, Commander." "It's heavily guarded," said Lieutenant Mira Jansen, Rhodes' trusted officer, her voice calm but tinged with the urgency of the situation. "We'll need to punch through their defenses to reach the flagship." "Do we have the firepower?" Rhodes asked. "We're ready, sir," she replied. "The new weapons technology from the Tovori and Ikra is integrated into our systems. If we can get close enough, we can punch through." The Aegis and its fleet were outfitted with the best weapons the galaxy had to offer. The Tovori's energy cannons, capable of piercing the strongest shields, were now integrated into their systems. The Ikra's specialized warp devices, capable of short-range jumps, would give them the ability to maneuver in and out of enemy territory with deadly precision. But even with these advantages, they were vastly outnumbered. "Prepare to engage," Rhodes ordered, his voice cutting through the tension that had settled over the bridge. The crew was ready, their nerves steeled for what was to come. The human fleet charged forward, a wave of ships accelerating toward the exertheri defenses. As they neared, the enemy opened fire with a brutal barrage, beams of energy flashing toward them from every angle. The Aegis shuddered under the force of the first few hits, but its shields held. The new alien tech had been worth the risk. Return fire, Rhodes barked. The Aegis fired its newly upgraded energy cannons, lances of blue light cutting through the enemy fleet. A few ships were immediately struck down, their hulls exploding in brilliant flares, but the exertheri fleet retaliated with ruthless efficiency. Rhodes could feel the ship shaking with each blast, but he remained focused. Deploy the Dwycra cloaking devices. We need to get past their defenses, Rhodes ordered. The fleet's smaller ships activated their stealth systems, vanishing from the sensors of the enemy fleet. With the enemy distracted by the decoy ships, the Aegis and its allies surged forward, cutting through the chaos. The Supreme Conqueror grew closer, its enormous size now dominating the battlefield. But just as they were about to launch their final attack, a horrifying realization dawned on Rhodes. The exertheri had anticipated this move. Hundreds of Calcarian and Centaurian ships, previously hidden in the asteroid field behind the flagship, emerged from their concealed positions, reinforcing the enemy's defensive line. The odds had just become even worse. "Damn it," Rhodes muttered under his breath, gritting his teeth. The trap had been sprung. He had known that the enemy wouldn't go down without a fight, but this was more than they had expected. The combined fleets of three of the galaxy's most formidable powers were now fully engaged in combat. "Commander, we're surrounded," Lieutenant Jansen said, her voice laced with tension. "If we don't break through now, we'll be caught in the crossfire." Rhodes' mind raced. If they didn't take out the flagship now, the war would tip irrevocably in favor of the exertheri and their allies. Earth's entire fleet would be destroyed, and humanity's hopes for survival would be dashed. This was their only chance. "All ships, focus on the flagship," Rhodes ordered, his voice cold and determined. "The Aegis will lead the way. We break through, or we die trying." The final assault began. The Aegis, with its advanced cloaking and weapons, plunged into the heart of the enemy defenses. The flagship's shields flared as the human fleet unleashed everything they had, blasts of energy and missiles tearing through the enemy's lines. The Aegis closed in on the Supreme Conqueror, its shields absorbing the incoming fire as it pushed forward. But just as they were about to land the killing blow, that exertheri flagship unleashed its secret weapon, a massive energy cannon mounted on its hull, capable of disintegrating entire ships in a single shot. The blast hit the Aegis dead on, sending it spinning through space, its hull scorched and cracked. The impact was catastrophic. The bridge was thrown into chaos. Sparks flew from the control panels as alarms blared. Crew members scrambled to stay on their feet as the Aegis was rocked by another powerful wave of fire. For a moment, it seemed as though the battle was lost. But Rhodes refused to give up. He staggered to his feet, his breath ragged, but his resolve unbroken. "We're not done yet," he growled. "Prepare the last of our weapons. Focus everything on that flagship." The Aegis was battered, its systems failing as it drifted through the void of space, a floating carcass of a once proud vessel. The energy cannon blast from the Supreme Conqueror had almost torn it apart, and the surviving crew members were fighting to maintain control of the ship. The flagship of the exertheri was only a few kilometers away, but the enemy's reinforcements were closing in fast. Humanity's fleet, now diminished and bruised, was on the verge of collapse. But Commander Kai Rhodes wasn't finished yet. Grabbing onto a console to steady himself, he called out, "All hands, prepare for final assault. We break them, or we die. There's no other choice. Launch the Phoenix Drive." The Phoenix Drive, an experimental weapon developed using alien tech from their allies, was a gamble, a weapon that could obliterate any target within a range of several kilometers. It was humanity's last-ditch effort. They had only one shot to make it count. The crew scrambled to initiate the sequence. Despite the devastation surrounding them, They held steady. The Aegis had been through hell, but it still had one last fight left in it. As the countdown began, Rhodes felt the weight of the moment settle over him. If this failed, humanity's hopes for survival would burn out here, in the cold reaches of space. 5 seconds, Lieutenant Jansen's voice cut through the chaos. 4. The ship's hull groaned under the strain of the weapon powering up. 3, 2, 1. Phoenix Drive activated. A voice cried out. With a deafening roar, the Aegis surged forward, energy crackling around its hull as the Phoenix Drive erupted in a blinding flash of light. The weapon unleashed its full fury, sending a wave of pure destructive force toward the Supreme Conqueror. The blast struck the flagship head-on, piercing its massive shields with ease and tearing through the hull in a spectacular explosion. The Supreme Conqueror shuddered violently, its once imposing form now reduced to a churred, disintegrating wreck. The ship's systems failed, and the remaining exerthary forces scattered in panic, their morale shattered. The flagship, the heart of the exerthary empire, was no more. But the victory came at a cost. The Aegis's systems flared as the Phoenix Drive depleted its remaining energy reserves. The ship was crippled, its weapons offline, and life support systems failing. The crew worked desperately to keep the vessel in one piece, but it was clear the ship could not survive much longer. "We did it," Rhodes breathed, his voice filled with exhaustion and disbelief. "We took down their flagship." But the battle wasn't over. The remnants of the exerthary fleet, though disoriented by the loss of their flagship, regrouped quickly, preparing to mount one final push. They weren't going to retreat easily. Humanity's fight for survival had just entered its most dangerous phase yet. As the remaining human ships engaged the retreating enemy fleet, Rhodes' thoughts turned to Earth. The victory over the Supreme Conqueror would send a ripple through the galaxy. The exerthary would not take their defeat lightly, but now humanity had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. This battle, this war, was far from over, but it had marked a turning point. Humanity had not just survived, they had made the first real strike against the dominant empires of the galaxy. Despite the chaos around him, Rhodes knew the truth. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Earth had stood firm in the face of annihilation, and with the fall of the Supreme Conqueror, they had shattered the notion that they were just another species to be crushed under the weight of empire. The war was far from over, but humanity had taken its place among the stars. As the human fleet regrouped, battle-weary but resolute, Commander Rhodes allowed himself a moment of hope. They had endured the impossible. And now, the galaxy would have to reckon with the dawn of a new era, one where humanity would no longer be an afterthought. They had come for the stars, and they were not leaving until they claimed their place among them. "Let's go home," Rhodes said softly to his crew, the weight of their victory, and the challenges to come, pressing on him. But for the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had earned its future.